Oh, let me just flip my camera over so you can actually see me. Hi and welcome. My name is Michelle Dutrissa and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin Up. Just let me adjust my, that's better. I don't feel like I'm sliding off the screen now. I'm glad you're able to join us today. Please jump on and say hello and let me know where you're from if this is the first time you've been visiting my site here. And I'm glad you could join me live on both YouTube and Facebook. If you haven't been on here before, you do need to give StreamYards permission to use your name. Otherwise, you come up with no name. So, yeah, I hope you'll enjoy what we've got to do today. Today we're Stamping Up. It's the 1st of July. So our mini catalogue and our celebration catalogue have gone live here in Australia as of today. So I can't, unfortunately, I've put my celebration catalogue somewhere, goodness knows where, somewhere safe, I'm sure. But I do have the mini catalogue and I do want to point out a couple of things to you. But first off today, we're going to be looking at doing some watercolouring. Stamping Up, having the month of July is a watercolour month. So we're going to be looking at today at some watercolouring techniques, and we may do that again next Friday if you wish to join me then as well. So let me just show you my desk and our, hold on one second, there we go. And here's our new mini catalogue. As I said, I'm sorry, but my celebration has gone somewhere very safe, I'm sure. Just not somewhere I can find right now. Now, this is a beautiful catalogue, and now I can open the pages and show you some of the items in here. There are a lot of wonderful things that you can purchase. And one of the things that I wanted to show you here is Stampin Up always do something that's for someone else, for a community event, and this is their Make a Difference item for this sale of this mini catalogue. And what it is, it's the Nourish and Flourish kit. So it's a kit that's all inclusive. It's $68 for the kit, and with that you will get everything here to make your cards. And you also get a lovely lunchbox as well that goes with them that you could either give as a gift to somebody or keep it for yourself to use. Now, when we do Stampin Up do an event like Make a Difference, a portion of the money will go towards an organisation. So the money, around about $4.25, is going to go to support organisations working to end food insecurity. So if you're looking for a really good kit to buy, this could be a fun one. I'm hoping this will be one I'll be able to grab in the near future. But lots of wonderful things in this catalogue. And, of course, it's got all your Christmas bits and pieces in it. So we've got lots of beautiful Christmas products in here. The gnomes, storybook gnomes, gorgeous, really, really lovely. Beautiful designer series paper, all in lovely bright colours. Of course, all your Christmas trees, and there are products in here that also correspond with the products in the celebration catalogue. So really worthwhile grabbing yourself a copy of this. If you don't have it and you're here in Australia, contact me and I'm quite happy to post one out to you. Now, there's a couple of little things I wanted to bring to your attention in this catalogue because we are going to be using this today. But on page 49, we've got a couple of products here which are I'm really excited about having. One is this item here, number 4, basic black cardstock in a 12 by 12. That's 30.5 by 30.5 centimetres square. So if you like doing your scrapbooking, that is a must to have. Also, this little kit here, Embossing Additions Toolkit. Now, this is a must. What it is you've got this tray, and I've already got my embossing powder in there. So it's a tray that you can do your embossing on. So instead of using your piece of folded up paper like I do, generally you've got this tray. It's got a screw at the bottom here which you can undo. So when you come to, after you've used your embossing powder, you can actually use that to pour that back into your container. So really, really good. And then you can just give that a bit of a clean out. So I'll just pop that back on there because I am going to be using this. I put my lid on my powder before I blow it everywhere. But also along with this tray, you're going to get a Stampin' Buddy. Now, an Stamping Emboss Buddy, we haven't had them in our catalogue for a while. So this is a really great way to get yourself one. They will last forever. I've got a couple here. This is number 3 now for me. And it will last a very, very long time. It also comes with a lovely little brush, which is a really nice little soft-headed brush to brush away all those little bits of embossing powder that you don't want. And a pair of what they call reversible tweezers. So basically, with normal tweezers, you would squeeze them to bring them in. With these tweezers, let me just grab this piece of paper here, you squeeze them and that opens them up. And they've got like a silicone tip on the end of it, so that's not going to melt nor get hot when you use it with your heat gun. So really great way. And as you can see, that's I'm not squeezing that, and that's holding that piece of paper really nice and firmly for me. So that is a really good item, a must item from the catalogue. And this particular item here is $47 here in Australia, but a real must if you're doing lots of embossing. And I've been after one of those trays for a long time because I think it's been quite a few years since Stampin' Up have had those. So that's what I wanted to bring your attention to in our mini catalogue today. I'm just going to pop that out of the road. And the other thing I'm going to do, because it is a watercolouring month, and we're going to be looking at a lot of watercolouring in our annual catalogue, on page 140, you've got your shimmery white cardstock and your fluid 100. Now, they're the 2 cardstocks that are recommended to use with watercolouring. Your regular basic white cardstock isn't quite heavy enough and will tend to peel if you use too much water on it. But your shimmery white cardstock, which is a slightly thicker cardstock and a slightly different manner, it's made slightly differently, it will actually hold your water. So that's a good one. And then you have your fluid 100, which is your watercolor paper, which is probably the best one to use. Now we're going to be using the fluid 100 today, and that comes in a pack of 10 sheets. It's $15.75 for that pack, and those sheets measure 12.7 by 17.8 centimeters. So it is worthwhile having that with your stuff. You can cut it with your embossing, you know, sort of colouring your, say, a flower, and cut it with your stamp and emboss, cut and emboss machine. So, and I will be using that today and in other days following. The other product we're going to be using today is your window sheets. So if we're just going to need a small piece of window sheet, around about 10 by 15 centimeters, something like that, just to do this technique. So let me get rid of these, and I'm going to show you the card we're going to make today. So this is a card I've put together this morning. Let me just bring it a little bit closer so you can actually see. So what I've done is I've embossed some dragonflies on there. We're using the white embossing powder, and then I've done a watercolor textured background. So every time I do this background, it will come out slightly different. So let's give it a try and see what we come up with this time. So products we need, you need at least 2 to 3 stamp pads. I'm using the colours Coastal Cabana, Bermuda Bay and Pacific Point, because those colours all work together. Make sure your colours all blend nicely. You don't want to put colours together that are going to blend and make a completely different colour if that's not the colour you want, or end up like a muddy grey or brown colour. You need your embossing powder, of course, your embossing tools. You're going to need your watercolour paper. So I have mine here. So I've got my piece of watercolour paper. I've got a piece of window sheet. Now this is a piece I've used for lots of different things. So I've got that. I'm also going to pop down something to protect my surface. So I've got this silicone mat that I'm going to use to protect my surface. And then I've got our silicone mat that Stampin' Up sells. So we're going to be using this to put our ink onto. You could use other things like a stamping block or something like that if you don't have a silicone mat, but I'm going to use a silicone mat for this. It's a really good tool to have. You can use it for gluing because your glue won't adhere to it, but we're going to actually put our ink on this today. So let's get started, and I'll just move a few things out of the road. And the other thing too you do need is some paper towel. So some nice thick paper towel and a bottle or a spritzer bottle filled with water. And that reminds me, I need to put some water in this. Now, we sell these bottles. They're about 2 in a pack. They're about $5 to $6, I think, for a pack of 2 spritz bottles. Really worthwhile having. This bottle here is just a bottle I've picked up that I've just filled with water, and it's got a little nozzle on it, which allows me just to pour some water in there, which is just handy to have because that means I don't have to keep running to the tap all the time. So let's pop our nozzle back on there so our spritzer bottle of water is ready to go. Okay, so let's get started with our card. Now, when you're working with watercolors, it is something you do need to practice with. Don't expect the first time it comes out really well. For me, it's usually the first time comes out well, second, third, and fourth time, not so good. So it is something you do need to practice and play with a lot, and never throw things away. You can even you can cut them out with punches and use them for different things, use them for backgrounds. So, but it's always worthwhile having a little bit of a play with this sort of thing first off. So I'm going to start with embossing my dragonflies on this. So I'm going to grab my embossing buddy here and just give my paper a bit of a wipe down. And what that does, it just stops any grease from your fingers being transferred and powder that could be sitting on the surface, which will cling to any grease marks left from your fingers staying there. We want it to only stay on the area where we're stamping, and we're going to be stamping with Versamark. So here's our Versamark ink here, and this is what we use when we do embossing. It's a watermark ink, and it allows the powder to cling. So the stamp set we're using is called Dragonfly Garden, and I'm just using this dragonfly here. I hope you can see that. Okay, so we're just going to use that one. So I've got it all here. I'm just going to ink this up, and we're going to stamp this about 3 times on our paper. Now, I am going to start this fairly lowish down, and I'm going to stamp 1 because when I stamp this and bring it back up, you can't actually see where that dragonfly is. So what I'm going to do is sprinkle this now with some embossing powder, and that'll allow me just to see where that is. And I don't know whether you can just see that or not. It's just sitting there, and that's going to allow me to see so I can actually stamp the next one. So I want to stamp the next one, still going upwards, but with my wings going in a slightly different direction. So I'm just going to stamp that one just there. Doesn't matter if you go off your paper a little bit. So let me just pick up some of this powder and take that over the top. This embossing powder, a little bit of it goes a long way. Just tap the back of it to take a lot of that off. I need a little bit more just on that top part of the wing there. And we're going to stamp that one more time. And then we're going to watch the magic happen. So let me just turn that around so I can get my butterflies going in the right direction. And I want my last one coming just about there. So again, just bring in my powder. And that's just going over the top there. So I don't mind if my dragonflies are just going off my cardstock there a little bit. I'll just make sure it's all covered. Just move that out of the road. I will clean that up in a moment. Actually, I should just do that now. Nothing worse than having a heat gun, which is going to blow all this powder all over the place. So we're just going to tap all that down. Get all of that in there as best as I can. Just use this brush and just... It's a beautiful soft brush. Just brush all that powder into there as best as we can. Get a bit of a tap. Put those tools back into there. Now we will be doing a little bit more embossing in a little while because we're going to do our sentiment as well. But to start with, we are just going to emboss this. So I'm just going to use that to hold my paper and heat this up. Now I'm sorry this makes a little bit of a noise. But what you're looking for is when you put your embossing powder on your Versamark, it's a matte. And once you've heated it up and it's all melted, it actually changes to a shiny image rather than a matte image. So we are looking at getting this all shiny all the way. If you feel your paper is curling a little bit, just heat the back. You don't want to get too close. You don't want to burn your work. But you do want to make sure that all that embossing powder is heated and melted. So that looks like that's done. Oops. So let me just show you. Don't know whether you can see that, but now we've got all those. It's changed from a matte finish to a shiny surface on those dragonflies. So that is now all done. So now we're going to come to the fun part. So I'm going to bring in my silicone mat here. I'm just going to give this mat here a bit of a wipe down just to make sure I've got no embossing powder everywhere. And we're just going to colour in 2/3 of the width of this. As you can see in my card, I haven't coloured it all the way across. I'm only just going 2/3 across. So what we're going to do for this technique, now this is a I'm trying to think now what they call the technique. It's basically where you're going to be using the clear window sheet to transfer the ink from your silicone mat to your watercolor paper. Now there is a name for it and I can't remember. I will put it in my description after this is finished. But I'm going to start with my lightest color first, and I'm just going to pop a little bit of this onto my silicone mat. And I'm going to use the spritzer bottle a couple of times. You don't want it too watery, but just spray that on a couple of times to make that liquidy, because it's all our inks are water base. And then we're going to grab a piece of silicone window sheet here, and I'm just going to fold it in, like not fold it in half, but just bring it so it forms a curve. And I'm just tapping that into there, and I'm going to tap this down and just push that water and ink around. I'll let that absorb into the paper. So I'm going to take this at different angles and different directions, and I'm just moving that colour around and giving some texture to my watercolour paper. So I'm just going to move it around. I want to get a bit of colour all over. This is just layering our lightest colour first. Now, if you've got areas where you don't want to take the watercolour out any further, you can just grab your paper towel and splotch that out a bit. Just watch for blotches around on your work surface. And just spread that around. So we're just using our window sheet just to move that ink around on our cardstock. And I'm layering quite a bit of this down. And I just want that ink to absorb into that watercolour paper. Now, because we've already embossed, it's actually, the embossed area is resisting the colour. Once we're finished with that colour, we can just wipe our window sheet down just to clean it up so we can add another colour. And we're going to clean up our silicone matte as well. And then we're going to take the next colour. So the next colour I'm going to work with is a Bermuda Bay. So again, just add ink to my silicone matte. Add some more water to this. Of course, the more water you add, the lighter that colour can be. So I don't want to add too much water. And then we're going to add some of this. Now just move it around a little bit because we don't want to cover up all of that lighter colour that we've put in there. We just want to just add a bit more colour, a bit more texture. To that. You can, as I said before, if you have areas you want to remove some of that colour, just use your paper towel and blot some of that out. Always come back and add a bit more in some of those areas. If you do it away from that straight line of your window sheet, sort of do it more into the centre, you're not going to get straight lines. You want to sort of have a little bit of a, so do it sort of more in the middle of your window sheet, pressing it out. So then you do get not just all straight lines everywhere. You have a bit of allow that colour to move around. So now I'm going to just clean that up, and I'm going to go to my darker colour. Now I don't want to use too much of this because this will overpower my what colours I've already put down. So just adding a little bit of water to that, not too much. I'm going to try to use more the centre, and I'm looking for white areas. You want to leave some white areas, but I want some areas to, especially over our dragonflies, to really sort of show up. And I'm just going to really press this around. You can see areas here where I might want a bit more colour. Just going to take a bit of that off from that edge. Blot some of that out there because I'm getting a bit muddy, I think, there. go in a different direction just to add some texture. Add a bit more colour and darker colour there. Just a matter of really working those colours around until you've got something that you're getting happy with. I'm just removing some of that watercolour. I am going to come back and add a little bit more of one of the other colours in again, and it's probably the Bermuda Bay. I might start back with one of my lighter colours, because I just want to fill in some of these white areas I've got. Because I've got a lot of white in there and I just want to fill a bit of that in, but not necessarily with the darker colours. And I'm just covering in some of these areas, particularly where my embossing is, just to be able to highlight. Push that around. Just got a little bit of colour there I want to add a bit more to, by adding a little bit of water to that just to make it a bit more fluid. I want to get that colour down in between those lines, because this is basically a resist technique, and I don't mind getting a few of those splatters around. Now that's very different to what I've already got, but I just might let this dry a little bit and then come back in and add a little bit more of the dark colours. So it really is just a matter of layering these colours down until you get something that you're happy with. But I'm not going to go back to that really dark one just yet. I want to put a little bit more of this Bermuda Bay. Because I just need a bit more colour in there. And the watercolour paper will take this going backwards and forwards, adding more. And just keep adding more texture in that until you get what you're happy with. You could bring your heat gun in there if you wanted to bring your heat gun in and just give that a good dry before adding another colour. And I might just add a little bit more of the Pacific Point in there, because I just want a little bit more blue, because I really want those water tonings happening in there. Okay, grab my window sheet again. Now I'm not wanting too much here, just want to add a little bit there. A little bit more in there, because I am getting aware that if I add too much colours, I am going to end up with a muddy mess, really. Okay, I think that might be it. Make sure you give your silicone mat a good clean before you pop it away. So I'll pop that away for later. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a hit there. And then I'm just going to Let this dry a little bit with using my heat gun. I'm going to dry the back of it as well. Just be careful not to warp your paper too much. And now I just want to add a little bit more texture because it's got a little bit of flatness to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my spritzer. I'll pop some water into the palm of my hand. And I'm just going to flick some water splatter. Might just do a little bit more. And what that's going to do, that will actually make the ink lighten in those areas where I've added those splatters. So if I just come in with my paper towel and start removing some of that water splatter, you can see that some areas are lightening up a little bit. Now I want a little bit of that lighter areas there, and it looks like a little bit like water droplets. So just going to blot them out there. The longer you leave your water there, it's like pushing the ink away. So, and you can see that it's just causing, and just one area where I want to put a few little ink. It's just not hitting that area. There we go. So I just want to remove some of those. And it's just left. You can see these little, I use these white areas here and here and a few little spots there. That's where the water droplets have landed, and then I've just wiped them away, and it's left like a real nice little watery type of effect there. Now I can hit that again with my heat gun and let to help dry that off, but your heat gun will make your colors a little bit duller than if you just let it dry naturally. So I'm just going to, there's another bit of water just there. I'm just going to put that now to one side and let that dry, and we can start working on the next part of our card. So let me just remove this mat. We don't need that any longer. And we're going to grab our, pull that away, our cardstock. And I've got a strip here that we're going to emboss our sentiment on. So the sentiment I've chosen is actually from the Hues of Happiness or the Happiness Abound stamp set. And I've just got it here, and I'm just using Best Wishes. So again, I'm going to use my embossing buddy just to wipe that down. Just then any powder that sits on the top or any grease on my fingers doesn't sit on the and hold that embossing powder on there. So again, we're just going to use our Versamark. Pop Best Wishes. Whoops, don't think I hit it on there. Grab our powder again. And this tray, as I said, this tray is just fantastic. I think it's one of the best things. Give that a bit of a flick on the back. Whoops, I might just put a bit more powder on there. That's better. Now this is where your brush can come in handy. I've just got a couple little spots here. I just want to very lightly brush that powder away. Because as soon as I hit that with the heat tool, that will melt and become permanent on there. Now I'm going to leave that and clean that up a little bit later. Let's just grab our heat gun. That's interesting. I've just got a little hair or something caught. That's it. Okay, so once we've done that, now trim this down. So, because it's a little bit too thick for what I'm wanting, I just want a very thin piece. So I'm going to take this. Now my trick is, of course, using my Post-it notes. And I want to trim this down and straighten this off a little bit. So I'm just going to line that up. So what I've done is I've lined up the bottom of my sentiment. Now I might just tip that again with my heat tool. That's feeling a little bit like it hasn't all melted. So let's just give that another quick hit. I could just feel some rough parts there in my, like if your embossing powder doesn't melt properly, not only will it still be a matte, it will actually not be a smooth, shiny surface. So that's what I just, when I touched this before, I could still feel like little rough lumps and bumps under my finger. So I just wanted to reheat that with the heat gun just to make sure that that was well and truly melted. So I'm going to flip that around. So what I've done there, I've used the bottom edge of my words and lined it up with the bottom, the edge here of my little trimmer. So now I'm going to do the same. I'm just lining up the edge of my trimmer. This is all really by eye with the tops of those letters. And I just want a nice fine sentiment to go across. So I'm just cutting my sentiment down quite a bit. So now I need to cut this down again now to the width of my cardstock. So I think I'm going to go, this is going to be 8.4. You could do this with your scissors if you want to do this with your scissors. Still want to cut that down just that little bit more. Just about there. Get rid of all those little bits. So this is all dry now. So I'm quite happy with that. So I've got some matte here of my basic black. I am going to stamp one more thing, and that's on my insert for my card, and I'm going to use the Coastal Cabana. And I'm going to stamp Dragonfly in there. And you could, if you wanted to, stamp a couple of them going up the side of the page, and I probably could have done that one a little bit better. That's okay, I'm quite happy with that. So I've got the Bermuda Bay card base here, and I'm going to adhere my card insert onto the inside of that, just using my multi-purpose glue and just using quite a small amount of glue, not taking it too close to the edge because I don't want my glue to ooze out along the sides. And I'm just going to slip that into place. Again, using your multi-purpose glue allows you a few minutes to maneuver your cardstock into position. Just give that a really good rub just to make sure that glue in there has really sort of spread out. So there's our card base. I've got the piece we've just watercolored there, and I'm going to adhere that to a mat in my basic black. Again, not taking my glue too close to the edge. But you do want to have it a little bit thicker probably than regular cardstock because this is a thicker paper. We do want to make sure, especially if this is warped a little bit, to make sure it's nice and flat. Give that a good rub. So there's that piece, and we're going to now adhere that again with our multi-purpose glue onto the front of our card. I think you could call the technique I've used here like smooching, because we're sort of smooching our ink. We're putting ink onto the plastic sheet and then pushing it out, smooching it out to out towards the the edges. So we're going from the center and pushing it outwards. So it's very much a smooching technique of putting your ink onto your watercolor paper. Gives you that beautiful natural water look to that as well. Now we're going to attach our sentiment. We're going to use some mini dimensionals here. And I'll take a pick tool. I hope I'm not, you've got good sound on here at the moment. I'm sort of hearing myself backwards a little bit, so I'm not quite sure whether I put things onto mute or not. So if there's a problem, I am terribly sorry. Pop that there. So I'm just putting around about put 3 or 4 dimensionals on this. And then we're going to position best wishes. And this could be used for birthdays. It could be used really for anything. Congratulations or weddings. It's just you're sending someone some best wishes. And then just to finish this off, I've got the polished dots here, and I'm going to be using the clear ones. I'm going to get myself some more of these. They're quite nice to work with, and I'm just going to use a couple of these to add some more like water dots, more droplets of water, because your dragonflies are usually found around water. I know when I went to Kakadu many years ago and canoeing up Catherine Gorge, there was lots of beautiful dragonflies, and stamping dragonflies always reminds me of back then. So there you go. There's my card. As you can see, both of them are slightly different. This one here, I've got my banner slightly wider, this one's slightly narrower, and the colours are a little bit different. on each of them. So I hope you've enjoyed that technique, that smooching technique of using your silicone mat and a piece of window sheet to spread your ink out onto your watercolour paper. So give it a try. If you post it, please tag me in it so I can see what you've done. And hopefully we'll see you next week as we try maybe another watercolour technique, since July is watercolour month. So take care, and I'll see you later. Bye.